But it's amazing to think that my daughter, the Lewisham resident, this child who was 9, that people in South Africa know who she is, people in America. So she sort of knew. People go to me, what would she have made of it? So they told her one day she would be in the medical books, but not even her. So one of Ella's dying wishes was that her siblings, who were really young, they wouldn't forget her. And she also didn't want her friends, obviously. She said, oh, Mum, I hope they will remember me. I think she'll like the fact that when you show her picture now or you mention her name, most people know who she is.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of On the Sofa. You should know who I am by now. I'm Rachel Nikosi, and I'm absolutely happy to be with my good friend Rosamund, Ade, Kizzy, Deborah.
Yeah, you've almost got it right. Hadu, Kizzy, Deborah, but...
How did I say it then?
We're friends, so yes. I will let you off.
How did I say it?
I don't know, you said it probably how someone who's from West Africa, quite close to me, in the other part, Nigeria, would say it.
That's me, you're describing me, you're too funny. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. So like I do with all guests, I always hand over to the guest to introduce themselves. They probably can do a better job than me. So please introduce yourself to the viewers and tell us who you are.
As I said, my name is Rosamund. I am a mum of 3 children. You may know my story. My firstborn sadly passed away from very severe asthma. I am also a teacher, a researcher. My passion is science, as people know, and I am a BreatheLife ambassador for the WHO, World Forum, and the climate and the CACC. And my passion is teaching. That hasn't changed. And I live in Lewisham, as you know. I'm very proud of that. My children were born in Lewisham. And hopefully Rachel and I will talk some bit about that. Rachel and I have to confess, we're very good friends. We share a birthday. So I said to her, we can't pretend we don't know each other. And yeah, we've known each other for quite a while now. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here. So in the background, Rachel is one of those people that support me and I'm able to do what I do. So thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Yes, we are friends and we've known each other for some years. I think I first met you sometime in 2017, 2018. I was still an elected councillor then, and I saw you somewhere in Catford Broadway after we had a full council meeting, and I accosted you saying, hi, Deborah, and you just looked at me, who's this mad woman? I then introduced myself, and since then we had coffee and we've got on really, really well. And I think it has something to do with the fact that we do share the same birthday and we have similarities in our behaviour, values, and everything else.
I think we see the world in a very similar way.
Absolutely.
Inequality, injustice. Most people should see things our way, of
Wanting
course.
to make a difference.
Absolutely.
Being empowered, being direct, being honest and working with integrity.
Yeah, and being very authentic. I think from where I'm standing, to go to court in front of the whole world, you have to be honest. I feel our grief is very public, which is taking me a while to get used to, and my children to get used to, but that's okay. And I am incredibly passionate about young people, being a teacher, and that hasn't changed. And, you know, before it was education, when I was a head of sixth form, it was about making sure young people were the best they could be. And yes, I've had to deal with many things. You know, knife crime came on my remit because I started teaching in 97 until Ella passed away in 2017. And yeah, there is a lot of potential in young people. It just needs to be harnessed correctly. I have always had high expectations, not just of my own children, the children I teach, the children I lead. That is incredibly important. They need to know where I'm coming from. The fact I wake up every day, I am in front of them. It's because I care and because I love them and I want them to achieve the best they can. That hasn't changed. Now I do something slightly different. It's about air, which is to do with their health, and I see a crossover on both those things, which I do. That hasn't changed, and I think people always say, "You are you, aren't you?" Well,
yes. This could easily be a coaching pod. This is brilliant. We started off well. I love it. And this is great. Jen, I want you to talk to us, especially for the viewers that don't know you, don't know your story. Talk to us about what was happening with Ella, who passed away. Prior to her passing.
Yeah, sure. So I was at Blackheath Bluecoat School, which is in Greenwich, which isn't far from here. And I was like head of year there, head of sixth form. And Ella was born in 2004. And I think it's really important for me to constantly repeat, she was incredibly healthy. On a good day, Ella was in the top 10% of children in this country for health. Ella was monitored quite a lot. So we actually know this. Ella became ill very suddenly. And it was during the October half term. And as a teacher, you can always remember these things half term because they are very important. You're so tired. So when it's half term, and half term that year was all about, I think she was doing the fire of London. I think she was in year 2 and it was about the fire of London. And one of the requests was to go to the monument. She went to Holbeach, a local Lewisham school, which is an excellent school, and they used to encourage parents to take the children out to encourage them or to expand their knowledge with the topics they were talking about. And I remember taking Ella, her siblings, and her friends came with me, and we went to the monument. And I think the monument has, just over 300 steps, and I'm sure someone will correct me if I am wrong. Yeah. And I will never forget that day as she had a cold, and when she was climbing the steps, I will always remember that moment when she said to me, "Oh, Mum, I can't climb the steps anymore." So I was like, "What do you mean you can't climb anymore? You've only got a cold." I mean, yeah. By the way, that was the beginning and the end. I mean, do I feel bad now? Of course I do, but at that moment, that time, she only had a cold. And I was a bit like, oh, come on, just climb up the stairs. Stop making a big deal about it.
You didn't realise, did you?
No, of course I didn't. I didn't realise. But that really was the beginning of the end, because that was the point. And I remember coming back on the train with my friend Ols, and Ella was so quiet on the train, which was really unusual. And we got home and she was like, "I'm going to bed." Ella never went to bed. It was in the afternoon, and my friend actually made her a hot chocolate. I didn't make it, Ols made it, and she went up to her bedroom and gave it to her. And that's why I can remember it so clearly, because it was unusual behaviour. And what started from then on is she developed a cough. And it's so weird now, every now and then, when I hear people coughing who've got COVID. They kind of trigger me, if you see what I mean. But I remember she had this cough, and the cough actually never really went away. What I mean is, even before, every time she had a seizure, she would have one of these coughs before. So the coughs really never went away. But that really was, and that was October, I think it's about 23rd of October, 2010. And the first seizure, or the first time she had to be resuscitated, was the 21st of December. So as you can see, almost three months in it. So we didn't have long to get used to her being ill, really. And what I find is really tragic now is Ella's siblings can not remember her being well because they were so young then.
How old were they at the time?
They were, so she was 6, they were about 3.
3, they're twins, isn't it?
Yeah, and so they can't remember, and they always thought she was ill. And I was like, no, remember before that. But I literally need to show them videos of their sister, like, because they can't, because her illness was so dramatic that it dominated our life. And because they were so young. And then I have to remember, when she died, they were 5. So of course they're not going to remember her when she was well. And that does sadden me, because they had 3 years of her being well, but they can't actually remember.
Absolutely heartbreaking. So we had that incident where she couldn't climb the stairs, and then she's gone to bed. What happened after that?
Yeah, she continued to have this cough, and I took her to Torrington Road Surgery. This is how local we are. It's literally a stone's throw away from here. And the doctor there, Dr. Silvanathan, at the time, referred her to a specialist in Lewisham Hospital. And I think we probably had one appointment with the specialist. But unfortunately, by December, Ella had her first seizure, 21st of December. And I remember being at home. She used to cough, nothing happened. But I'll never forget one night. She was actually in my bed because I was upstairs. And when she started coughing, I kept on having to get up to come down to give her an asthma pump because they gave her an asthma pump. Although she didn't have asthma at the time, or we didn't know. They just gave it to her and said, just use this. And I thought, oh, of course, this is such a drag coming from upstairs. So do you know what? Just come and lie next to me. When you start coughing, I'm just going to grab it. I will never forget as long as I live where she went rigid and she went blue round here. And for me, that moment, that second, I thought she had died. I am never going to get over that. I just remember it. Oh. And literally, I mean, now I can see what she was saying, but because apparently she could hear me, but when I was trying to, she could hear it, but she couldn't respond. I didn't know that at the time. I thought she had died. So she thought I was like a lunatic. I literally lifted her. I'd never do that. I mean, I learnt my lesson. Ran downstairs. I was screaming. And my neighbours heard me. And then, you know, when you can see people switching on their lights. That is literally what happened. Because they could hear me screaming.
Yeah,
That's how loud I was screaming.
Yeah, of course.
And Gary, who lived opposite me, he ran over. Thank goodness he had the sense to start resuscitating her. And I remember after we went to hospital, they discharged her the following day. I was like, what? So 22nd of December, we were back home, but she had given me such a fright. Lo and behold, she continued to cough. And I will always remember the 28th of December, we were going to go and see Panto on that day. And she had this persistent cough. So I said to her, do you know what? Let's go to hospital. Let them go and check you out before I take you to this Panto. Yeah. And to be fair to the junior doctor there, all her stats were perfect. So she discharged her to go home. Yeah. And then we went to the Panto again in the middle of the night. She then had her second seizure. This time round, we weren't so lucky. We got her to hospital and they had to put her in a coma. But I remember, I would never forget again these things. The consultant was screaming because when she put her name in, she realised she'd been in hospital earlier in the day, didn't she? Yeah. And she wanted answers as to who saw her, why she'd gone home. But don't forget, at this time, no one knew what was going on with her. But the consultant wanted answers. And I'm really grateful to Dr. Braithwaite, basically, because by her putting her in a coma that night, she saved her life. And I might not be sitting here now. And she literally gave her an extra 2.5 years, really, to actually live. So she had the sense, that moment, to put her in a coma. And that's why Ella survived. And that was the 28th of December, 2010.
2010.
So she did manage to, and people sometimes wonder why I'm really grateful to the doctors. And it's because of things like that. If she hadn't quick thinking, put her in a coma, she could have literally died that night.
So what, putting her in a coma did what exactly? Just so viewers kind of follow
well, she
and
wasn't
understand.
able to breathe for herself. So it was supporting her,
Indeed. Okay.
her lungs.
And in order to do that, someone must be put in a coma.
Yeah, she had to.
Okay.
She literally would have died. And do you know what's really fascinating? When I hear now about shortages in the National Health Service, I remember that night there was no room anywhere. And she had to end up at St. George's Hospital. So, I mean, sometimes I do sort of pull faces when people blame COVID. No, the National Health Service thing has been going on for a long while. This was 2010, and we couldn't find her a bed round, in intensive care. And that's why she had to end up at St. George's Hospital. So you can see I have a different view of the shortages.
Yes, naturally, because you've had some bad experiences.
Exactly.
So fast forward, I think 2012 now, isn't it? The year Ella dies.
2013.
2013. And I mean, you don't have to go into detail, but just to give a feel of what was happening just before. And
well, what was happening just before, and I say this in mind with her classmates might see this, and I know they have been devastated by her death. And this is what people need to understand. When a child dies, yes, the focus is on the family, but there are so many other people, because Ella came from a big family. So my cousins, her friends, her teachers, her head teacher, our church, everybody. But I remember from September 2010, so we had the Olympics. She was great during the Olympics. She didn't have any asthma attacks during the Olympics. So we were either at Blackheath, because Lewisham put a lot of massive TV screens there. So we were on the Common. So we were either at Blackheath or we were actually at the Olympic Park itself. And the one in September was the Paralympics. And because she was disabled, this is what people forget, asthma can be a disability. Because she was disabled, Ella milked it for all it's worth. I mean, I've got to be honest with you. She did. She had her disability badge, and she would show up there because she looked as right as rain, mind you. Remember, Ella had an invisible disability. And Ella was about lecturing people. And those that knew Ella well will probably know where this story is going. She would sort of get there and wanting access to the disabled bit. And they will say, oh, this is for disabled people. And you know, the moment those poor people would say that, I'll think, oh, God, here we go. So she'll go, so you don't think I've got a disability then, do you? And you know how you're like, oh God, this child. And I used to just think, oh Ella, please don't lecture them. She goes, you do know that some disabilities are hidden, don't
Yes.
you? And I used to think, oh Baba, just really let go of all this. And she'll just do this whole thing about, she goes, you know, I'm disabled. It doesn't mean that because I've got my feet, I have an invisible disability. Ella was always about lecturing people on all these things. And we spent quite a lot of time at the Paralympics. And do you know what stands out for me? What stands out for me was watching the final of the racing, and Oscar Pistorius was there.
Right, okay.
Oh, that does stand, and there's a good story to this. I will link it to her final night. So all the videos we've got of Oscar running, Ella filmed it. And because we were right there under the velodrome as well. And the reason why I mentioned Oscar in particular was Ella died on the 15th of February. And on the 14th of February, we were watching Channel 4 News. So then she died in the early hours. So we were watching Channel 4 News on the 14th of February. And it came on the Channel 4 News that Reva had died. Remember the Oscars? And I remember Ella sitting there going, you never really know what people are like when you see them. And I remember looking at her going, Baba, you don't know the story. She goes, guilty as anything. And I thought, oh my God. I was just used to her making her kind of commentary. And because people go, what do you remember? And the other thing I remember was Nelson Mandela was ill. And they were forever reporting on it. And Ella was going, Mum, I don't know why they keep on showing Nelson Mandela. The man isn't dead yet. Just leave him. You know, she was that type of child.
Yeah.
So it's just that when you mention that, I just think of those things. And I think her siblings feel a little bit aggrieved when they have this, sometimes when people mention tragic or, you know, how to describe her. Because I have to say, when she wasn't having asthma attacks, oh my goodness me, you could hear her voice all right. But
she was empowered and encouraged and she was winning, wasn't she?
Absolutely. So there is quite a division with people who really knew her and knew what she was like. Look, she was the type of child when, for instance, someone once called her black. And I remember, you know, one of those that she used to do, and I said, oh God, here we go. And then she went, I'm not black. And then you can see people going, sorry. And she goes, I am half Asian. So if you say black, you're denying, you know, she was always like that. And sometimes when people would describe her, I can always tell people who knew her and people who know of her story. Because people who knew her will know how incredibly vocal. Look, she was on the Lewisham marches. Remember when Heidi Alexander was our MP?
I was there, yes.
When the hospital was...
I was there,
right,
yes.
so for her, you can imagine, that was her local hospital. There was a threat of A&E, and she took it very personally. Because the moment she went to hospital 28 times, and the majority of them were at Lewisham. So she really felt incredibly strongly when there was a threat threat of the hospital, closing down. So that's the type of child she was. So therefore now it makes it easier for me when I'm doing things in her memory, because I know the type of child
Absolutely,
she was. Do you see
yes,
where I mean?
of
So I
course.
thought I do have conversations with her, like, is this the sort of thing she would approve of now or not? And it's quite easy for me. And also I'm still in touch with her friends and what they've become. And I can see where she would have fitted in. And I look at her siblings as well, what they've also become.
Yeah, and they look so much like her.
Profile wise, they do look exactly, if you see them from afar, they do. And my younger daughter, her nickname in school was Little Ella, because she's so, and people say to me, does she mind? No, she doesn't mind. And Ella had an ego so huge anyway. They have the same middle name, Roberta, because Ella wanted her named after her. And I remember saying, you can't have two children the same name, so you can share the second name. So she's also Roberta. But I do appreciate they really do look alike, and people do sometimes get a little bit freaked out when they see my other daughter. But no, I do have two daughters. I am officially stating that here.
You do. So between 2010 and 2013, Ella's, she suffers from asthma. She's well at times, but other times she's obviously very unwell.
Can I make it clear that it was actually 28 months? It's not 3 years. I think when people see the 2010 and the 13, they think, no, I wish she survived for 3 years, because that would have
28 months.
28
just
months.
Short of 3 years.
Just short of 3 years. So I always think that's really important to put
so
that.
you mentioned that she passes on the 15th of February 2013. And tell me what happens after that. I'm particularly interested about, your team saying it's because of air quality, because of air pollution.
I mean,
what happened?
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, when she died, we knew she had severe asthma, but what we weren't aware of is what was triggering her asthma. So asthmatics, it might be a virus, it might be cold air, it might be dust. Ella was negative for everything. So we knew she had severe asthma, but we didn't know. Now, Ella's inquest wasn't until September 2014. And the reason behind this is, yes, there is a long waiting list, but they needed someone who's quite specialised to take the first inquest, someone who had good medical knowledge. Anyway, we had a child death review in the borough. It literally drew blank. So after the inquest, and I remember the coroner's officer saying to me, I think she felt sorry for me when I actually went there, because I thought, well, I had never been part of an inquest. And she could tell that I was thinking the inquest was going to answer my question. But she'd done so many inquests, she knew it wasn't. And I remember when she sent me the post-mortem, but she actually warned me. And I will always remember what she said. She said, Rosamund, I've looked at this case, and I just think I need to warn you. 99% of inquests are resolved. However, there's 1% that are never resolved. And she said, I think I just need to, putting the case together, I think I need to let you know that, so that you don't go into it expecting.
Was she almost warning you? Is it something that she was aware of or knew? Because
I don't know.
That wouldn't have been a warning you give everybody.
No, but I think
inquest,
she could say,
surely.
and one of the things I asked her to do, and I can't remember where my head was at then, is I asked her to take samples all over Ella's body. I actually requested that. So she brought the diagram, and I remember her sitting there with me saying, I've taken her hair, I've taken her fingernails, I've taken this. I can't answer why I did it, because I can't remember where my head was at then. So we had the inquest, and she was right. It told me what happened on the night. I was there, so I knew. But we were not any further forward. Where did this asthma come from? What were her triggers? And I remember the New Shopper, our local paper then, and those of you who don't know the New Shopper, I mean, not everyone gets it now, but in those days, in 2014, most households got the New Shopper.
That's right. Yeah.
And so my first contact with the media was putting Ella's funeral in the newspaper, because I remember so many people knew her, and I just couldn't manage to tell people. So it was easier to put the advert in the newspaper about the funeral. So that was my first contact. And then the second contact, there was a brilliant journalist there called Mark Chandler. And Mark came to the inquest. And when I saw him there, I was a bit like, How did you know it was happening? And he said to me, every week or whatever, we get a list of names of people who have died. And then he just said, I just thought this one would be really interesting. And really, that was the...
And he was right.
He was right. And Mark splashed it all over the front of the news shopper, because there were things that came up in the first inquest, which we won't go into. They were just, as a journalist, it was splashed all over. So that was the first chance the residents of Lewisham got to hear about Ella's story. And the following year, in 2015, we hadn't got any further. And I remember calling Mark and saying to him, would he run a story? I have since spoken to Mark and asked him. I had no evidence, I said to him. Not really anything. And I said, when I came to you again and said to you, for the first anniversary, can you run a story on her? You actually did it. I said, I'm surprised you didn't think, oh, there's this mother who's grieving and she can't get over it. And you said, no, you said there was just something about her story, because I was in court and there was something about how you were. I thought there was more to the story. And I have always thanked him. So he ran the story again. And one of my requests in January 2015 was, if there was anybody in this area who could help me get to the bottom of why my daughter might have died, I would really like them to step forward. We have a foundation, and I put the foundation out there. Could they get... So this guy got in contact. His letter is somewhere. And he's the one who sort of said to me, and a few other people get in contact, the usual, it's dairy, no, it wasn't. But this guy stood out. And I remember he said in his letter to me, you need to check the air pollution levels near your house. Now at the time I thought, oh, just another person who was sort of saying something. And I remember showing it to my lawyer that this guy said this. But I didn't know what he was on about. Well, obviously that was looked into. And it turned out on the 14th of February, the night Ella had her seizure and she was rushed to Lewisham Hospital, at that moment in time, Lewisham had the highest air pollution at that moment in time. So that guy was right.
Absolutely right.
I've never... Thank you, by the way. If you're watching this, I am really, really, really grateful, because you ultimately are at the bottom of why Ella got a second inquest. I did initially think, what's he talking about? But I didn't disregard it, did I? It was one of the lines of inquiries, and that's how the whole thing started, by the way.
So when the investigation happens, an inquiry to see whether it was the poor air quality outside your house that actually triggered the death of your daughter.
Well, what my lawyer cleverly did, and she also deserves credit, so she put all Ella's hospital appointments, she lined them up, because there are public records of it. When a child is admitted, it is on the computer that you have to book the child in. And what she then realised is 27 out of the 28, there was a spike in air pollution on all the times.
Correlation.
Yes, she went to hospital.
Yes.
So, but I needed more. For me, Ella had many tests. That wasn't sufficient enough for me. I wanted more, because when you say that, I know 27 out of 28 is quite high, but I still thought, still concerned if we go to court, someone might come up with some other theory. So I thought, no, I need more than that. That's when her body samples became useful. So Stephen Holgate, where her samples are kept in Great Ormond Street, he went there to look at it for me with the pathologist, the senior pathologist who carried out the post-mortem on the day Ella died. Right. And between them, that's when they found out that PM 2.5 had got the pollutant from cars, had got into her bloodstream. She was always going to die. She did not stand a chance. And it's quite sad that despite everything we've kind of been through, people still, there's the odd person who still tries to doubt it. I mean, I've never met the pathologist in my life. He doesn't owe my family anything. He's a professional who does his job. And at some point, when Stephen told me what had happened to her, I had to accept it, because otherwise you will go mad. I wanted to know. That's why I put out the interview in the News Shopper for people to help me to get to the bottom of it. And they did. And it was very hard to accept what had happened, because we love Lewisham. As you know, we're still here. It was very hard. I think the hardest conversation after speaking to Stephen was to come home and tell Ella's siblings what ultimately the reason why their sister wasn't here. It's probably one of the hardest conversations I have ever had
Absolutely.
to.
And just so we can absolutely be clear for the viewers, the inquiry concluded that Ella died because of particles from cars, diesel from cars, got into her bloodstream.
Yeah,
Is that right?
so basically, not just that, her asthma, if it wasn't for the air pollution, her asthma wouldn't even have started. So not only did it start off and triggered off her asthma, and her siblings are very similar, and people around here will know I have been livid, not because I've got anything against my council, but my children, and there will be another study coming up between them, all three of them, because we've got Ella samples there. So the twins have agreed to a study now. We are going to be looking at why they are more susceptible to air pollution than maybe the general population. So that is happening. That is going to happen very, very, very soon with Oxford University.
That's fantastic. I was going to ask, because the question would be, what about all the other children?
Yeah.
What's happening with them? Are there other children that have experienced or suffered from asthma and also passed away because of this? And if so,
I don't know.
Where are we getting the information from?
I am not able to answer that.
Yeah.
One of the things we do know now, though, is air pollution affects 91% of the population. However, there are going to be people who are more vulnerable. I would say people who live closer to main roads, because the closer you are, the more you're going to be impacted. I am actually, so you're going to have an exclusive here. I'm actually going to be asking the government in relation to COVID that can they have a look at air pollution? And if you say to me, why are you doing that? Because air pollution weakens the immune system. Now, before the vaccine came in, not last year, the year before, that is 2020, there was a stage when I think four times more black people were more likely to get COVID rather compared to our white counterparts. So black and Asian and ethnic minorities, they were 4 times more likely. Now, I would like it to be investigated whether air pollution has contributed to this. And in case people are wondering, why is she saying that? Because air pollution weakens the immune system. Now, due to inequality in health, this isn't making a political statement, this is a fact. We know that when you look at main roads, when you look at poorer housing condition, this affects black, Asian and ethnic minorities more. Now, the reason why I can say this categorically, if you look in the scheme of things, let's talk about the job market. Now, before COVID came in, the government investigated the whole gender pay gap in regards to the BBC, and there was a gap in pay when it came to gender. The next thing they were going to move on to was to have a look at whether race played a part, i.e. if you're working next to your white counterparts, are you receiving the same pay for doing the same job? We never did that investigation because COVID happened. However, if you look at the pay structure generally, we know that black, Asians and ethnic minorities are not as highly paid. If you look at the top 100 businesses. So if you aren't that well paid, you have to go for cheaper property. And we all know the cheaper properties are closer to the road. Now, please don't shoot the messenger. These figures are all there. So if black, Asian and other minorities are closer to the road, they are going to be more impacted. So when a respiratory virus comes in, like COVID, I expect them. Now, the early data is looking promising for me. It is. They have looked at areas in London, New York, Wuhan, Lombardy, and guess what they have? They have more air pollution, and guess what they have? More COVID deaths. So people sometimes need to calm down. When I say things, they want to jump on my back. The data is coming. And yes, I have spoken to scientists, and they said to me, try and convince the government to include air pollution in the public inquiry, because by the time the public inquiry comes out, the data will be here, because data is coming in all the time. So I'm not here about to start a race riot. These are actual facts. And this is something I have studied throughout my whole career, inequality in health. And I think sometimes it's a lack of understanding when I say things because of what else is going on in society.
Yeah, but I mean, it's your job, isn't it? You're
Absolutely.
a air quality ambassador, BreatheLife ambassador. It's
Absolutely.
your job to pull out the correlations between anything which may affect people around air pollution. So absolutely right. Talk to me about the Ella Roberta Foundation and tell me, what are your main strategic objectives?
We set that up. Dr. Colin Wallace and he's from Great Ormond Street. Yeah. He was Ella's consultant. And his big regret was he wasn't able to save her. He came up with the idea of the foundation, and he thinks I'm being very generous when I credit him. I was a teacher. I didn't really know anything about charity. It was his idea. And what he also wanted to do, he wanted to make sure that children in Lewisham, this charity could have been set in Great Ormond Street, but he wanted it to be in Lewisham. He wanted children from Lewisham to benefit, because we know there are quite high numbers in Lewisham of children either with asthma or respiratory illnesses. And the aim ultimately was to make sure that no child went through what she went through. And that was Colin's and I's objective. Also, it was to find out why Ella died. I think we've achieved that.
Yes.
And the next step now is to talk about and to help other children in our borough who also... So we were very clear from the right beginning of what we were doing. And we were going to do that by reviewing scientific evidence. So it's not about politics. It was about scientific evidence. And I will continue to bring scientific evidence to the politicians in my borough, to the Mayor of London, and to the government. And it's not a personal attack. This is where people get it wrong. I think I can officially say, and Rachel knows this, that Damien Egan and I, we are actually very good friends. And I think this is the confusion. I have a job to do, and so does he. And it's not about politics. And I get on with a lot of the politicians in Lewisham very well.
And you get on with me.
And I get on with you. But I always have to say this. Vicky Foxcroft is my MP. Vicky Foxcroft wrote to the Attorney General, because Ella is in her constituent, to ask for a new inquiry. This is what, I think this is the confusion. People, we are not at odds. There are things that, you know, as a resident, I'm not always going to agree with, but we don't actually hate each other. And I think people are misunderstanding.
Well, they're misinformed, and they don't understand. They might see tweets and things you put out on social media, making a point about a policy or a lack of pursuing a particular policy. We're not going to mention the recent one.
No, we won't.
So therefore, as a result of that, people think that you hate the council.
No.
That's because a lot of people that challenge the council actually despise the council. You don't sit in the same place as these people. You've got a bigger agenda to achieve, and we will go on to your political career or political aspirations in a second.
But can I just say on that one? So ultimately, it is to save life, and people need to also understand, if they have been following the inquest very closely, there is a genetic link between my children. And I even write that word out to try and maybe prompt people. So my children are going to be more impacted than others. And what they also believe, and the Mayor of London and the Mayor of Lewisham know this, they believe they have a right to live where they do. I can't force them and drag them out of their house to go and live elsewhere. My children are very Lewisham children, and people will find out when we talk about the Borough of Culture. They'll be involved in it, they'll be representing it, and the cemetery where their sister is buried is very close to our house, and they've been really traumatized by what's going on. So right now, look, if I had to rush them to hospital like their sister, we would have long gone. But that's not the situation. And when people send me things and say to me to move, that is not the answer. To me, the answer is to clean up the air, and they can stay where they are. And what's one of the reasons? Ella's things are still in the house. Her bedroom is there. It is not as easy as people think. When people talk about mental health with children, not that they have any issues, but I have tried to work to give them a balanced life. I know they miss their sister, and I try and make things okay for them.
But this is why you're a campaigner. You're trying to help solve the problem by also remaining where the problem is, rather than pack up and move away, because that's not the solution. Somebody else might be affected. So your job as a campaigner is to try and make that difference. And that's what you're trying to do.
Absolutely,
Packing and moving away is not going to solve the problem.
By the way, I am not making a point. And also to say, my children are monitored very closely with medical evidence. And if their medical teams thought they were in danger, and we did have a situation in 2020, we're not going to mention it. And guess what? The Mayor of London and the Mayor of Lewisham are very aware of the situation with my children. It's not like I'm keeping anything secret. Well, there's nowhere to hide with our family.
Yeah.
And both these gentlemen, they are incredibly aware what is happening with, Mr. Khan has a relationship with my children. And my children also has the phone number of the Mayor of Lewisham, Damien. And they are not 5 anymore. They can ring him, and if there's something they are unhappy about, it's not me behind anything. Yeah. They can, they've agreed to do this study about genetics and air pollution. Of course, I explained it to them, but ultimately they have to make the decision themselves. And I don't sit there and go, "Oh, you must do it." No, I give them the facts, and ultimately it's up to them whether they want to do these things.
Absolutely. I want to ask you about responsibility. And do you think there's a joint responsibility between residents of any particular local authority or local borough, the layperson, to help tackle the bad air quality that we see around London? And if so, what do you think that joint responsibility should really look like?
Everybody is responsible. All of us, me, you, councils, the Mayor of London, and ultimately the government. My thing about the public is, I do think sometimes we want things, but we don't want to do the hard work. The only thing I can say about the public is, and I've repeated this so many times, is things like short journeys, where they can, they need to walk or they need to cycle on short journeys. I also think the government need to make it easier for people to have alternatives, i.e. invest in public transport, because there are people who actually want to use public transport. I have been very clear about a diesel scrappage scheme, because I do get people, van drivers around here who say, "Ros, we do want to change. We can't afford it." So it is a joint up. I've been very open about the ultra low emission zone. And I know poorer people are impacted? Of course I know. But also poorer people, they are suffering the brunt of the health inequality. And I really hate the way people use them in this argument. As far as I'm concerned, when I talk to Mayor Khan, it's not really about politics. It's about improving health for people of London. Yeah. And he was one of the parties in Ella's inquest. This is again the misunderstanding. And in there, people who follow it very clearly will know ULACE was part of what the experts said need to happen, is to get those filthy old cars off the road. Yes, people were encouraged to buy it. They need to take that up with the government. That is not my remit. But that is what Mayor Khan was advised to do as part of Ella's inquest. Yeah,
I want to ask you a question. And it's really about, I've seen, when we met sometime back in 2016 or 2017, I've seen how strong you are, how determined you are to make a difference. And I've never seen you get upset when you're speaking about your daughter. I've never seen you at a meeting where you're losing your rag of anybody. I've just seen constant strength and empowerment and directness. And I want to ask you, what is it about you that makes you get up every morning, irrespective of what you've experienced, the trauma you've experienced? How do you do it every day?
I love my children. My children keep me going. I have a very tight group of friends. I think probably coming up in the next couple of weeks, this is probably one of the few interviews I'm going to do.
Thank you.
Because Ella, not for any reason, Ella would have been 18 a fortnight. Oh, she's just reminded me, a fortnight's time. And it's going to be really, really difficult because it's another milestone she would have missed. I have really bad moments. So Ella's birthday, 24th, she died 3 weeks after, February the 15th, and she was buried 3 weeks after that, the 8th of March. And I think I've been really clear and I've been very open to everybody that I do find, especially that time, you know, when it's dark, when it's wet, I find it incredibly hard. I try not to always think about ultimately what happened with her, the resuscitations, because I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. And I think that's why I draw a line now and I focus on the air pollution and the campaigning rather than repeating her story, because that can lead to depression and all sorts. So I really, really do try and focus on, you know, like my work with Mayor Khan, the ULAs and things like that. And that's why I don't talk about what happened on the actual night, not for any reason, but if you can imagine saying it again and
Of
again.
course. Thank you for sharing with me, though. But thank you.
That sort of thing. There are moments which is really, really hard, but no, I love my own children. I love young people in general. That hasn't changed. And I don't know why I'm in this unique position. And it is a short window and I need to make the most of it. Look, most of the work I'm doing, I'll be dead and gone before I think young people will get the benefits from it, but it will be a good legacy to leave them. And ultimately, I wouldn't want any family to go through what we went through. Look, I'm not doing this to become a hero or something. Trust me, I am honest about that. And
but I think you are absolutely a hero.
I
That's
say
the thing.
no, but I say that to my children.
You know, you are a hero, and I think. You know, modesty is great and that's all great.
No, but I'm not going to see it.
The work that you've done, the work that you're doing, but even your presence in going to these meetings, going to the UN, you know, working and trying to make a change around air pollution, that is very, that's a hero. You know, so I just want to say that I think you're a hero. You know,
okay.
and you should accept the title.
I don't feel, by the way, I don't feel like that because it is incredibly difficult dealing with governments, dealing with mayors, dealing with local authorities. They're coming from a political point of view. I'm coming from a health point of view, as COP26 taught me. But it's stuff I'm very passionate about. And can we, let's be honest about this. Around the world, 500,000 children under the age of 5 die every year due to air pollution. Up to 12 children in London die every year from asthma. Some of that will be linked to air pollution. 26 children die in the UK every year from asthma still. And it's just something that I just can't accept. And I am willing
nobody should want to accept that.
Yeah, no, I just can't accept that. And I will, look, people who I've taught, they will say to you, oh, that's what she's like when she was in education. She just pushes and pushes. And I don't think I am any different. Those days, it was about white working class boys making sure they left school with 5 GCSEs plus, and black Caribbean boys and black African boys. Not so much the girls, because the girls, you know, the girls were achieving. But those days, it was about making sure they didn't fall into knife crime. Yeah, I mentioned that word, because that was on my remit. But I'm very, very clear. Look, young people have potential, but it's about who's around them and who's harnessing it. And I'm very, 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 very passionate. Look, I think I've had a lucky life. I started off in foster care and I was incredibly lucky. I had a very good foster mum who completely adored me and supported me. And I believe that I just have something to give back. And if Ella hadn't died, I would be in education still. Do you see what I mean? So I don't see what I'm doing is that much different, by the way.
Well, that's debatable. I really think you're a hero. You've mentioned, obviously, your closeness with the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan.
Yes.
You've mentioned the fact that your daughters have the Mayor, Damon Egan, of Lewisham's phone number on tap.
Yes.
Tell me how you feel the response has been to your campaigning from the very beginning to now.
Yeah, I mean, Lewisham have really embraced us. And I think, I'm talking about the residents as well. Some of them knew Ella, which helps. They're incredibly passionate. And next year, it will be 10 years she died. There will be a statue in Lewisham. And again, when we surveyed the residents, we didn't get one person who actually said, I don't think that's a good idea.
A statue?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So a sculpture.
Fantastic.
So it's just amazing people. Look, I understand they are politicians. I'm well aware of that. But they also know from a point of view, they know about Mr. Khan knows about the inequality. He knows about injustice. My lawyer knows Sadiq Khan very well. He was a lawyer before.
He was, yes.
Yeah, so, and he understands where I'm coming from. And I think the biggest compliment anyone has ever given me has to be Sadiq Khan last year at a Black History event. And he said the work that I am ultimately doing will save millions of lives. And it's the first time I've had to actually think about that, because I didn't think about, when someone says something, you went, oh, and that's, what can I say to that?
Well, it's absolutely true, isn't it? And
yeah, but that wasn't why I started it off.
Yeah, no.
But that's why I tell my children, who have sacrificed an awful lot, and they allow me, they're very good children, so they allow me to do what I do. And what I mean by that is, if they were difficult or anything like that, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. And I'm incredibly grateful to my children for allowing me. And, I think it is too much to take in for me to think that what you're doing will save millions. So I don't think about that side of it. And I just think about the day-to-day, what I have to do to push. Now, I may like Damien, I may like Mayor Khan, and I may like members of the government. However, ultimately, is to push them to make sure they do the right thing. Indeed. Just so that no one is confused by that. Yeah. And as long as people continue to die, and this year with my BreatheLife ambassador, I will be going hopefully around the world. And I want mayors of cities to adopt the new WHO targets. Why do I want them to do that? Because again, it will save lives. So I'm very clear in my objectives. Now, people may see it as being pushy. That's fine. That's okay. But as long as children continue to die, I will continue to ask for things.
Of course. What lessons have you learned through the campaign?
Never to give up.
Good.
There will be good days and bad days. Keep your focus. Don't allow things to distract you. Make sure your messages are very clear and very concise. Never lie. If you don't know something, say you don't know. I.e., when you were a teacher, you used to say to your students, let me find out and come back and tell you. And just be very open and honest. If you don't know something, you just don't know it. And I think people can see through that.
I think those are kind of really inspiring and empowering words, actually, in terms of doing anything, isn't it?
Yeah, also care about other people's kids as much as you care about yours. Because people care about my children. So it's quite easy for me to care about other... people write to me and sort of say that. We're just amazed how much you care about other people's kids. But I used to have 181 kids, i.e. my year group plus Ella. So I'm quite used to caring about other people's children. People write to me about that and say the way you talk about children. But I was ahead of here, and there are people in education who care about children just as much as I do.
I think it's a natural kind of consequences, isn't it, of the work you do, but you might go into that field because of that reason, isn't it? You actually care about, the kind of academic and educational achievement of people generally. Right, I want to quickly ask a question about your political aspirations. I know you ran as a candidate for the Green Party on maybe 2 or 3 occasions. Quickly tell me about some of that.
I think when I started out, I was trying anything and everything to push the whole clean air message on. And at the time, the Green Party, this was in 2000 and maybe 17 or 18. I liked their message, and when it came to air pollution, we were really in sync. I think we know this last year, I got an honours fellowship in science. So I'm now an honorary fellow. And I think the scientists and Stephen would like me to focus on my academic career. So for now, the people of Great Britain and London will be glad to know I am not running for any office. And I really need to focus, because this is such an important issue. And I need to give all my energy. I don't even think Steve is even distracting me for even doing a PhD, because this matter is so, he just wants me to give it the full attention, which it deserves.
Who is Steve? Sorry.
Stephen Holgate. He's Professor Sir Stephen Holgate.
Right, okay.
He's the expert witness in Ella's case, and he's also the UK champion for air quality.
Great. Good to shout him out.
So I think people will be relieved, depending on what side you are on.
Of course.
I'm not going to be running for any offices. No, on a very serious note, this is about life and death. So I can't afford to be distracted. And we will leave politics. Obviously, I'm always going to vote. And if I've taught you before, you know how important I've said voting is. People died for the rights to vote. And I know that some of our cousins in America don't get to vote. So I'll still be voting. But no, I will not be taking any sides, even on this matter over air quality. I think it needs to be a cross-party issue. And people shouldn't play politics with people's lives when it comes to health and air quality. So I'm not sitting here as a Green, as Labour, as Conservative. I'm sitting here to represent what I think is right for the British public.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to seeing more of your academic career. I know Ella's birthday is approaching on the 24th of January, which is some 2 weeks away now. How have you normally celebrated? And what's your plan for this year?
We will go to a quiet restaurant, Lorenzo's. My friends will be smiling. And it might be me, the children, and a couple of godparents, if that's possible, because some of Ella's godparents are teachers, so if they can make it on the day. But what we are going to do in Lewisham is in Mansfield Park at 3:30 on Sunday, January the 23rd. We are going to have a candlelight vigil to her. We're going to remember her and all the good that she stood for. And also, I know some of her friends, her classmates will be coming up. Her siblings will be there. Some of the family will be there. And Mayor Egan will be saying a few words. And so will Vicky Foxcroft, Ella's MP, will also be saying a few words. And because it's about Ella, there will be a bit of music there because people remember how much she used to like the music.
Vicky Foxcroft, the MP for Lewisham Deptford. Just so
Lewisham Deptford, okay, sorry.
No, it's fine.
So we hope it will be just an hour and it's for us to remember her. But also, the government will be rolling out the consultation to do with PM 2.5, which is the pollutant, which came up in the inquest that the coroner says needs to be dealt with. Otherwise, more children will die. A consultation will be coming out very soon to the public about that, end of January, February. So it will be an opportunity again to highlight that. So not only we will be remembering Ella, we will be making a point to the government about that. And please, everybody needs to engage with that. It is going to run from whenever they start it to the 31st of October. And this is really important. It is a poisonous pollutant, the actual worst, and it impacts all the organs in our body. And I need to do what I can to let people know the consultation is going on. And I'm really asking people to engage with the consultation, please.
Absolutely.
Please engage with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of my campaigning this year is going to be focused on that, on the consultation. And I really need the public to engage. I couldn't get it into the bill, which is now the Environment Act, but I haven't given up. But I need them to engage with this consultation.
And presumably the Department for Health or the new auspices would be leading on that consultation, I can imagine.
I hope so. This
coming from the government, yes.
This is a government thing. I'm not sure in what format it's going to be. But in my role, I just need to bring it to the public's attention because, as you know, as a politician, the public are not always aware of the consultation. And we cannot allow that to happen. So, yes, we are going to use Ella's Vigil. I will mention something about that. And do you know what? Ella would want that as well. She would. And it's an opportunity again to say thank you to all the residents of Lewisham who have supported us. London,
and hopefully all the residents of Lewisham watch this pod. Will be nice.
London, the UK and the wider world. And part of it is unbelievable that when I went to COP26, when people came up to me due to the pandemic, so the victory of the inquest came in December 16, 2020. And obviously we went into lockdown. We weren't travelling. But it's amazing to think that my daughter, the Lewisham resident, this child who was 9, that people in South Africa know who she is. People in America know who she is. In Sweden. I don't think that is. I mean, Ella knew. People always say to me, "What did Ella knew?" Ella's asthma was that bad that Dr. Colin Wallace told Ella that one day she would make the medical books because it was that Ella had one of the worst cases of asthma ever in the UK. Sadly, she has that title. So she sort of knew. People go to me, what would she have made of it? So they told her one day she would be in the medical books, but not even her. So one of Ella's dying wishes was that her siblings, who were really young, they wouldn't forget her. And she also didn't want her friends, obviously. She said, "Oh, Mum, I hope they will remember me." I think she'll like the fact that when you show her picture now or you mention her name, most people know who she is. Yes. And I think for me as her mother, it's an honour being her mother. And the amount of good, considering she was on this earth for 9 years, the amount of good that she will eventually do. But nothing will ever replace that awful moment. And I always say to people, I would give anything to have 5 minutes to my daughter. And someone said, what would you say to her? Oh, that's really easy. Oh, love you, Baba. Like I used to say. That hasn't changed. No.
Well, I know that we both live in the London Borough of Lewisham, and we have the Borough of Culture 2022. Where we're doing many kind of festive things and events across Lewisham to celebrate being awarded some money around culture. And I understand that some of that is being dedicated to Ella. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, it's a great honour. Obviously, there's a climate emergency going on. And I think people need to understand why part of it is being dedicated to Ella is because Ella was incredibly passionate about Lewisham and anyway. But I think it is fitting and it is right after raising the awareness about this. Dryden Goodwin, who's an artist, and I are currently working together with other activists, and we hope to highlight the issue of air pollution. It's not just in Lewisham. Obviously, because I come from Lewisham, Lewisham is always mentioned, but air pollution is everywhere, really. But also, it will be a fitting tribute to Ella. And next year will be the 10th anniversary. Who can believe it's been 10 years already since she passed away? It is unbelievable. But on the 24th of January, she would have been 18. So, yeah, I know, gosh, I know. So
yeah, we'll really enjoy that day. And she's there doing her work as an angel across the world, I'm sure.
I will. It's strange, though. I think, goodness me, I would have had a daughter who would have been 18. So that is a little bit surreal, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you so much for sharing so much intricate details with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm absolutely honoured to have you here. And I know that you are also a friend of Arnold Schwarzenegger from all of the work that you've done around air quality. So please send on the sofa's regards to Arnold.
He's passionate about this topic. I hope to see him definitely in May, unless he's in this country before. And for me also is to learn from him. This is what he was a governor for 8 years, and clean air in California was something on his remit. So when I am with him, I learn I know people look at the movie side, but I am with him to learn, and especially how he deals with politicians, because he's quite used to that. So for me, it is a real privilege and a learning curve. And like me, he sees this as a health issue. And it's the last words I would like people to look at the climate crisis as a health issue. And if you look at it as a health issue, health is something due to COVID that it impacts all of us, doesn't it? And that's how I want people to view this.
Well, can I move on to the personality questions? A bit of fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question is, you're in a work meeting and your manager continues to undermine you in front of your clients. You've worked really hard to build up this clientele, and it's really important for the project as a sales manager that they don't think you're a pushover. Do you ignore your manager and say nothing? Put the meeting on a 5-minute break to have a word with your manager and say, cease with that bad behaviour? Or during the meeting, consistently challenge your manager, respond to her, so your clients are absolutely sure that you are not a pushover and they should be working with you?
Very simple. Answer is B. By the time I finish having a quiet word, they would never open their mouth again. B.
Most people pick that. Fantastic. Question 2. When it comes to dating, Do you think that two people can be compatible irrespective of their different life values and moral compass? Good questions, eh? Good questions. What do you reckon?
Are you vaccine or anti-vax?
Well,
the answer is no.
No, absolutely. We need to ensure we're aligned with our values and morals.
Absolutely.
You know?
I am a scientist. Trust me, it wouldn't work.
Not only health, but finances, family values.
It wouldn't work.
Employment, career, you name it.
It wouldn't work.
Exactly. The last one now. If you, Rosamund, had all the money in the world, what would you do with it and why? I mean, literally,
I would change.
Money's no matter. You've got all the money in the world.
I would change the law in the UK or at the United Nations to make sure that breathing clean air is a human right. Okay. And that would mean I could retire and go off and have fun with my friends.
Okay. Accepted. Well, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for coming, blessing the sofa.
I love your second question.
I really want to do some work with you in the future, so let's keep talking. And of course, we're friends and we'll be going out.
Let's keep moving. Keep on moving. As I used to say to my students, keep on moving.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome.